This is Robbins Lane between Hicksville and Syosset. The maximum authorized speed over this crossing is 80, the fastest crossing on the branch. This is just north. And we move further east to the Syosset Station as a westbound for Penn Station with M7s comes in. All right, we're at Syosset Woodbury Road crossing between Syosset and Cold Spring Harbor. Approaching westbound is 1657 from Huntington to Grand Central Terminal. If I hear anybody commenting that I should call it Grand Central Madison, I'm going to seek them out and inflict bodily harm. And the gates are going down on Syosset Woodbury Road at 412. Train 1562 from Penn Station to Huntington. This guy will have M9s. Just pulled out of Syosset Station. And the gates are going down to Syosset Woodbury Road at 417 for 656. The first of the diesel rush hour fleet to Port Jeff. He runs from Long Island City to Port Jeff. We're in the Stillwell Park Wilderness area between Cold Spring Harbor and Syosset, just east of Amont Interlocking as an eastbound comes. The autumn leaves are scintillating as a westbound goes through Stillwell Preserve. And we're at Eastgate Drive in Cold Spring Harbor as an eastbound approaches. Here comes 656 diesel, Long Island City to Port Jefferson, the first of the rush hour fleet to Port Jeff. It's got 516 with a K5L horn. Approaching west at 420 is train 657, Port Jeff to Jamaica. Well, here comes 658 from Hunters Point Avenue to Port Jefferson, past a glorious spectrum of color at Cold Spring Harbor. Approaching at 520 is train 659, Port Jefferson to Jamaica. Another one of those off-peak through trains to Jamaica. Further east to the Eastgate Drive crossing just west of Cold Spring Harbor Station. So we have westbound M9s. And here comes 656 from Hunters Point Avenue to Port Jefferson at Eastgate Drive. Well, now we're further east at the beautiful Hillside Station in Cold Spring Harbor. Approaching is 1656 from Grand Central to Huntington. 447. That's a sound that makes conductor Paul get excited. Goes 1661. .505, here comes 1658, Grand Central to Huntington. Got quite a barrage of trains that use Grand Central. The eastbound platform is much shorter than the westbound. It looks like if they wanted to, they could extend it, but I guess that stairway is in the way. Well, next approaching at 510 is 658 from Hunters Point Avenue to Port Jeff. He's going to have another sandwich, 418 and 417. What's with that? Are there a lot of cab cars in the shop? Yeah, 418 has a decent K5 LA. US 1563, Huntington to Penn Station at 5:17. Well, this is Rogue's Path between Cold Spring Harbor and Huntington as 657 comes down the hill heading to Jamaica. Well, approaching is the old 658 en route from Penn Station to Port Jefferson with K5 LLA music of sorts. Well, further east at the Oakwood Road crossing, here comes 660 from Penn Station to Port Jefferson. We're just west of Huntington, and he just climbed out of the grade from Cold Spring Harbor. He'll be arriving at Huntington Station in about a minute and a half. So we move further east to the 11th Street crossing at Huntington Station, just west of the station of Huntington, in Huntington Station, New York, not Huntington, New York. Well, approaching 11th Street at 5:43 is train 659, en route from Port Jefferson to Jamaica. 1564 is not far away from Penn Station to Huntington. Get to hear the lovely sound of this beautiful horn on this cab car. Well, here comes 1564. Looks like he's got an approach signal at Hunt 1 east of here. Approaching westbound 550 is 1663 from Huntington to Grand Central Terminal. And don't you dare question that. And right away, 551 is 660, Penn Station to Port Jefferson. 518 and, well, he's got 519 and 518 in the back. Unfortunately, 518 is in the back. little further east to the Pulaski Road crossing, which is just around the curve west of the station at Huntington Station. They call it Huntington, but it's in Huntington Station. And approaching at 6:04 is train 662 from Long Island City to Port Jefferson. He just switched from 2 to 1 at Hunt 1. Here I am at Huntington. Hang around here, I catch 664 coming in. This is 1571 getting ready to depart for Penn Station at 6:20. In 1571, you saw him knock down the approach medium pedestal at Hunt 2. The interlocking is right where the rear car is passing over. Well, here's the beautiful Dutch colonial style depot here at Huntington. Like many others on the railroad, like Bayshore, Riverhead, Mineola, Manhasset, although that one has 3 floors. Just think. The railroad could have gone through Huntington Village, which is a much nicer area, but the powers that be in Huntington didn't see eye to eye with the railroad. They had a big fight with the Long Island Railroad, so they decided to build the line through here. Pity. And the lovely sound of an M7 horn at 6:28. It's the approach of train 1566. Arrived from Penn Station to Huntington. He just blew for the crossing at Pulaski Road. And he'll be rounding the bend here, going through Hunt 2 interlocking and coming into track 2 at Huntington Station.
The 6:31 train to Port Jefferson will depart in 6 minutes on platform A. Jefferson will depart in 1 minute on platform A.
Approaching at 6:32 is train 664 from Penn Station to Port Jefferson. The second dual mode powered train out of Penn Station to Port Jefferson. This place has changed quite a bit since when I was a kid. Now it's electrified, frequent service roughly every half hour, 2 tracks, high-level platforms, 3rd rail. Years ago, when I was a kid, like say 6, 7 years old, early 60s, my dad used to take me here, and it was a low platform affair with a station track, and it had a siding track with a platform. And every afternoon at 4:53, a meet would take place here. A westbound from Port Jeff to Jamaica would come and meet a Jamaica to Huntington train. And after the westbound left, the eastbound Huntington terminating train, the engine would detach and run around his train and couple to the west end and go out at 5:14 back to Jamaica. And almost every time when we came for that meet, there would be a local freight working in an industry to the west of here with one of those Fairbanks Morse H1644s. Wow, what memories. One neat thing about the Port Jefferson branch is it hasn't been invaded by those reduced aspect signals or color light signals so far. Port Jeff is still pretty much position lights with pedestals or full signals like this guarding Hunt 3. Port Jefferson branch starts at Divide. All the signals and switches are controlled by the Divide desk at Jamaica Control Center. Divide in Hicksville has position light signals. Amont, east of Syosset, has position light signals. The 3 interlockings of Hunt here have them. There used to be a Hunt 4, but I think that's now an electric lock. It used to be an interlocking. You have signals at Duke and Northport, Fox and Kings Park, Post and Smithtown, Stony and Stony Brook, and Jeff in Port Jefferson. Well, 1662's equipment is going in the yard here. Huntington has a very long yard track to the east. Extends all the way to near Park Avenue crossing. Sometimes trains have to come out the east end of the yard and throw that electric lock switch to get onto the branch. Well, 1568 is arriving Huntington at 6:58 on track 2. Shortly, 698 from Long Island City to Port Jeff will be arriving on track 1. All right, arriving is 698 at 7 o'clock. Partially obscured by 1568's equipment. It's got D30AC 407, which has a decent K5LA. And 698 has a clear on the Hunt 3 1E signal. That's all for today. It's been a beautiful day. And you're looking east and west at the Greenlawn station. Greenlawn, they built an extra platform here for controlled siding that they never used. And approaching Greenlawn is train 698 en route from Long Island City to Port Jefferson, one of the last through rush hour trains from the city. I'm shooting these scenes in geographical order, not in chronological order. This is train 664 leaving Greenlawn from Penn Station to Port Jefferson. This is at the Taylor Avenue crossing. And we're now at the Elwood Road crossing in East Northport, and approaching is 660 en route from Penn Station to Port Jefferson. And we're still at Elwood Road, and not too far behind 660 is 662, en route from Long Island City to Port Jefferson, with a horn that I love so much. Now we move to East Northport. This is the Flowerfield Road crossing. We're just east of the Northport Station. It's actually in East Northport, but they call it Northport. No more trains to Northport, not for many decades. And the gates are going down for 658 as 659 is comfortably tucked into Duke Siding to the east. You'll proceed west when 658 clears Duke 1. Yeah, 658's got 422 on the point. See the switch go over at Duke 1. There it is. All right, here comes 659 out of the siding. You'll get to hear that beautiful K13A horn, similar in beauty to the Silverliner 4s. Ha! We get a couple of trains at the Bread and Cheese Hollow Road trestle between Kings Park and Northport. This trestle looks like it was made by an overzealous erector set buff. It's really cool. I don't know how long it's been around, but I know it's been around longer than I've been on this earth. This trestle is at the bottom of a dip. From the west, it goes down a big slide, and it goes up again on the eastern end. East of the Bread and Cheese Hollow Road trestle at the Meadow Glen Road crossing for an eastbound. This crossing is now closed. And here's the great engine 518 on 660 at Meadow Glen Road. Well, here's the not-so-great 416 coming down the chute into Kings Park, approaching Fox Interlocking. And we're still at Kings Park, but on a much colder day. And he's going to meet a westbound here. And we're now east of Kings Park at the Lawrence Road crossing, and approaching down the chute is train 656 en route from Long Island City to Port Jefferson, the leader of the rush hour fleet to Port Jefferson. Well, we move further east to a nice wilderness area between Kings Park and Smithtown, just west of milepost 45 for an eastbound. We get a couple of trains at the Nissequogue River trestle west of Smithtown. Here's an eastbound on the Nissequogue River trestle from a different perspective. Right into Smithtown, here he is. Gonna have a meet here. And the westbound's meeting counterpart has the great 411 K5LA horn. Well, today is a very nice May 12th, 2025. Going to do some more rail fanning of the Port Jefferson Branch today. We're here at Smithtown, the southernmost point on the Port Jefferson Branch, and you're looking at the interlocking of Post 2. At 3:47 p.m. there will be a meeting of trains 654 and 657. All right, the gates are going down on Landing Avenue at 3:47 for 657. Port Jefferson to Jamaica. We'll be meeting 654 here. Soon the divide desk at JCC will throw that switch for 654. There it is. And the next crossing east is Nissequogue River Road. We catch an eastbound in beautiful fall color. We see an eastbound departing St. James and cold and snow. you're looking at the beautifully restored 1873 built depot. It was built for the Smithtown and Port Jefferson Railroad. It's a veterans monument here at the station. They are America's heroes. Don't disrespect our veterans. That's a nice K5LL at 457. That's train number 656. En route from Long Island City to Port Jefferson. This is the leader of the rush hour fleet. He's arriving into the St. James Station. And at 5:08, as you see the traffic on Lake Avenue in St. James going across, well, they better not be going across now. Approaching is train 659 en route from Port Jefferson to Jamaica. 657 and 659 are oddball, off-peak Jamaica-bound trains, westbound. We have a westbound at the Mauritius Road crossing, the first crossing east of Lake Avenue, St. James. Rather meek horn. The next crossing east is Mill Pond Road, and we see the old 658 train sliding down the hill en route from Penn Station, New York to Port Jefferson. We're further east by the former station site of Flowerfield, which is long gone since the late 50s. This is the Parkside Avenue crossing. It's closed, it's fenced on both sides. On occasion, they open them if they're using access on the other side, but I don't think this has been used for some time. But they still blow their horns for this crossing. By the looks of things, I would say nobody's driving across this railroad crossing. All right, it's approaching 5:50 p.m. The next train east is 6:58 en route from Hunters Point Avenue to Port Jefferson. He's got DE30AC number 411, which has the second best K5LA on the railroad behind the 518. 512 is train 656. This is the beginning of the rush hour fleet. This train comes from Hunters Point Avenue, Long Island City, bound to Port Jeff. And it's early February. The days are getting a little longer, so much so that you can see this train in daylight out here. Normally November, December, and much of January you can't. We moved to a rather peaceful spot. This is the former site of the Syosset train station, which was discontinued back in June of 1980. We're just east of Gnarled Hollow Road overpass. Since my last visit out here a few years ago, they've laid a lot of concrete ties. Okay, 625 approaching his train 661. Deadhead's out of Port Jefferson, but he originates revenue-wise out of Stony Brook, bound for Huntington. He'll be meeting 6. Meeting 660 at Stony Brook, and he'll meet a couple of other trains before he gets to Huntington. Right, approaching is 660 from Penn Station to Port Jefferson. At 661, he has to meet both 660 and 662 at Stony Brook. Then he meets 664 in Smithtown, and then he meets 698 at Duke Siding east of Northport Station. So it takes a long time for that train to get from Stony Brook to Huntington. Once he passes over the overpass over Old Town Road, he's going to start climbing all the way into Port Jeff. Approaching at 647 is train 662 from Long Island City to Port Jefferson. Here we see a westbound and a beautiful autumn scene at the old Syosset Station site. 712 approaching eastbound is 664. Route from Penn Station to Port Jeff. And here's a westbound at Hulse Road and a winter scene. And here's a spring scene of an eastbound at the beautiful S-curve west of Hulse Road. Now at the Bayless Avenue crossing in Port Jefferson, we're just east of Jeff Interlocking as this eastbound arrives. Well, we made it to the gem of the entire Port Jeff branch, Port Jefferson Station, which is in Port Jefferson Station, not Port Jefferson. Totally different zip code. This beautiful station was built in 1875. Well, at 7:45, you hear the horn of train 698 from Long Island City to Port Jefferson. It used to be numbered 666, but don't need any devil's omening here, so they changed the number to 698. This will be the last train we catch today on this Port Jeff Branch ramble. It's getting kind of chilly. Once this train arrives in the station, the Jeff 1W signal should go to clear. This is DE 30 AC 401. Let's head home. Snowy night in Port Jefferson as we see this eastbound arrive. This is back in 2022. This is train 657, an equipment move to Stony Brook and a revenue train to Huntington. It's a slow trip as he meets numerous eastbounds and sidings on the route to Huntington. Trains that terminate in Port Jefferson head into the yard, and they have to pass by the Columbia Street crossing here at the west end of the yard. Here we see one of the rush hour trains heading into the yard for the night. throw some switches to get into the yard. You can see 658's equipment sitting off to the left in the yard.